They fined me $500 for parking on my own driveway. That's when I decided Karen Mitchell's reign was over. The bright orange violation notice slapped on my front door was the final straw. $500 fine. Excessive vehicles in driveway. 3 cars. That's what triggered this nonsense. My work truck for my construction business. My wife's SUV for her hospital shifts. And our daughter's used Honda Sweet 16 present that apparently crossed some invisible line. I've always been a rule follower. I'm on my lawn on schedule. I shovel snow before it settles. I keep to myself. But Karen Mitchell, our HOA president, had turned our quiet community into her personal kingdom, one petty fine at a time. That morning, I watched through the window as she conducted her inspection walk. Designer sunglasses. Pink clipboard. That smug smile as she snapped yet another photo of our driveway. My blood pressure climbed with every click of her camera. My wife touched my shoulder. Maybe we should just move the car into the garage and admit guilt where there is none. I shook my head. No, this ends now. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Paperwork finalized. You now legally own 67% of the homes in your neighborhood. I smiled for the first time that day. Karen didn't know that for 5 years, I'd been quietly buying properties throughout our development using different LLCs to stay under the radar. What started as smart investing had become something more: leverage. I never set out to become a landlord, let alone a neighborhood vigilante. I'm just a contractor who believes in fair play. When we first moved into Oak Ridge Estates, it was a friendly community where neighbors actually knew each other's names. Kids played kickball in the street without fear. The annual block party was something everyone looked forward to. Then Karen Mitchell was elected HOA president, and everything changed. First came the aesthetic guidelines, 20 pages of rules dictating everything from acceptable mailbox colors to the maximum height of garden gnomes. Then the fines started. Small at first, growing larger and more frequent. $50 for leaving your trash can out past 5 p.m. $100 for wind chimes that were excessively melodic. $200 for unapproved flower species. Karen and her board group of 4 loyal followers who rubber-stamped her every whim ruled through fear and selective enforcement. Her friends received warnings. Everyone else got fines. The elderly couple next door, the Wilsons, were fined for their grandson's tricycle being visible from a street. The Rodriguez family received violations for cooking odors during their daughter's quinceañera. The Chin family was cited for bamboo that was non-approved vegetation. I'd watched good people, my neighbors, shrink into themselves. Our once vibrant community became silent, fearful, with houses that looked identical and people who barely waved hello anymore. When I received that first violation 3 years ago, $100 for wind chimes my wife loved, I considered fighting it openly. Instead, I began forming a longer strategy. I made calls to real estate agents and attorneys. I formed separate LLCs, each with different business addresses and contact information. Then I waited. Every time a house in our development went up for sale, one of my companies made an offer all cash, quick closing, minimal contingencies. I didn't evict anyone. I simply became their landlord, keeping rent fair and maintenance prompt. Most residents didn't even know who owned their homes anymore. But I did. And with each closing, each deed transfer, my plan grew stronger. I'd build a business from nothing. But tonight, I was about to build something even better: a neighborhood set free. That evening, the community center buzzed with tension. Karen had called an emergency HOA meeting specifically to make an example of me. Little did she know, I was about to flip her whole world upside down. "Let's begin," Karen announced, clicking through a slideshow of my driveway from different angles, each photo zoomed in to make 3 normal vehicles look like a used car lot. "This is a clear violation," she declared, pointing to my daughter's Honda. "It hasn't moved in 48 hours. She conveniently left out that my daughter was home from college for the weekend. "Property values are at stake," Karen continued, her voice dripping with artificial concern. Then she dropped the bomba draft of a new bylaw. 2 vehicles per household, garage parking only. The crowd murmured uneasily. I glanced around at my neighbors' faces, some nodding in fearful agreement, others staring at their shoes, avoiding eye contact. But what stopped me cold was Karen's binder. She'd been tracking every car that entered or left my home for 3 months. This wasn't just control anymore. It was surveillance. I stood up slowly. Point of order, Madam President. Karen's eyes narrowed. You're not recognized, Mr. Thompson. According to HOA bylaw section 7.3, any property owner may raise a point of order regarding voting procedures. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me. I walked to the front, footsteps echoing in the hushed room. The floor seemed to stretch forever as whispers followed me. I placed my folder on the table and looked Karen directly in the eyes. The room went so quiet you could hear Karen's acrylic nails clicking against her pink clipboard. She tilted her head, confident this would be over quickly. For the past 5 years, I said, my voice steady, Sunrise Properties Me Real Estate Company has quietly purchased homes in this development. Karen's smile froze in place. She opened her mouth to speak, then watched as I connected my laptop to the projector. A property map of our neighborhood appeared lot after lot highlighted in green. As of this morning, I said, pausing just long enough to let it sink in, I legally own 67% of this neighborhood. The silence deepened for 3 heartbeats. Then gasps rippled through the room. Karen's face drained of color so rapidly I thought she might faint. Her perfectly manicured hand gripped the podium so tightly her knuckles turned white. That's impossible, she stammered, her voice suddenly an octave higher. It's not only possible, it's documented. I pulled out another folder. I also have 32 signed complaints from residents detailing harassment, selective enforcement, and fraudulent fines. The room erupted, neighbors whispering, phones recording, a few people even clapping. Mrs. Rodriguez, an elderly woman from down the street, stood up shakily. She fined me $200 for my grandson's tricycle being visible from the street, she said, her voice quavering. I live on a fixed income. Then Mr. Chun raised his hand. My family was cited for bamboo in our backyard. It's been there for 7 years. Like a dam breaking, years of suppressed grievances poured out. Karen had fined the Wilsons for wind chimes. She'd threatened the Garcias over a basketball hoop. She'd even forced the Jenkins family to remove their daughter's wheelchair ramp for being non-aesthetic. Last winter, said Mr. Okafor, an immigrant from Nigeria, my mother came to visit. She uses a walker. Karen called it an unapproved mobility device when we left it on the porch. My mother is 92 years old. The room went silent with shock. Then someone in the back said, "That's disgusting," and murmurs of agreement spread. Through it all, Karen's face morphed from shock to rage. The perfect mask of control she'd worn for years crumbled before our eyes. "This meeting is adjourned," she shouted, knocking over her chair with a loud crash. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer." She grabbed her designer purse, stuffing papers inside haphazardly. As she stormed toward the exit, her heel caught in the carpet. She stumbled, nearly falling, catching herself on the water cooler. A single, slow clap started from the back of the room. Others joined in, the applause building to a crescendo as Karen yanked open the door. Her final glare could have melted steel, but it was too late. I cleared my throat, quieting the room. I moved to dissolve the current HOA board and hold new elections with term limits and transparency requirements. Mrs. Rodriguez shot up her hand. I second the motion. Hands rose across the Rumah forest of defiance, 5 years in the making. The vote wasn't even close. The next morning, my phone rang nonstop. News travels fast in suburbs. Some calls were from neighbors expressing gratitude. Others were from Karen's lawyer, threatening everything from defamation suits to criminal charges. I forwarded those to my attorney, who assured me our position was unassailable. "You legally purchased those properties," he said. "You followed every HOA bylaw to the letter. What you did might be unprecedented, but it's entirely legal." Within a week, we held proper elections. A new board formed, diverse, transparent, and actually representative. Mrs. Rodriguez, whose grandson's tricycle had been the subject of so many fines, was elected treasurer. Mr. Chun, with his non-approved bamboo, became head of the landscaping committee, and Sarah Jenkins, whose daughter's wheelchair ramp had been deemed non-aesthetic, took over as president. Our first act was to audit the HOA's finances. What we found confirmed our worst suspicions. Under Karen's leadership, nearly 40% of all HOA fees and fines had gone to administrative costs with minimal documentation. Thousands had been spent on community improvement consulting from a firm owned by Karen's brother-in-law. The pool maintenance contract charging double the market rate belonged to her nephew's company. We found evidence that Karen had selectively enforced rules to pressure elderly homeowners to sell always to the same real estate agent, who, coincidentally, happened to be Karen's best friend. They'd been profiting from turnover, from fear, from control. We turned our findings over to the county prosecutor. Then we got to work rebuilding our community. We rewrote the bylaws. Gone were the 20 pages of arbitrary aesthetic rules, replaced with 5 pages of common-sense guidelines focused on safety and structural integrity. We eliminated petty fines and instituted a 3-warning system before any monetary penalties. We created a transparent appeals process for any homeowner who felt unfairly targeted. But the most symbolic change happened at the corner of Maple and Pine, the exact spot where Karen used to take her violation photos. We transformed it into a community garden. Where fear once grew, now tomatoes, basil, and sunflowers reached toward the sky. A small bench sat beneath an oak tree with a plaque reading, "Good neighbors make good neighborhoods." 3 weeks later, a moving truck rumbled down the street, Karen's final exit. No one had forced her out, but she couldn't bear the loss of control. As the truck passed my house, I noticed something ironic fluttering under her windshield wiper parking violation from her new HOA. Justice does have a sense of humor. The transformation of our neighborhood wasn't just about rules. It was about people emerging from their shells. Mrs. Rodriguez's grandsons played freely in her front yard, their laughter filling the street. The Chun family built the Japanese garden they'd always dreamed of. The Jenkins daughter could finally come and go from her home with dignity and independence. That Saturday, we held the first neighborhood block party in 5 years. Tables lined the street, loaded with potluck dishes from a dozen different cultures. Children darted between lawn sprinklers. Mr. Chun taught interested neighbors about his koi pond. Mrs. Rodriguez shared her secret salsa recipe. I stood back, watching it all unfold. The community we should have been all along. "Never seen anything like this," said a voice beside me. It was Bob Daniels, once Karen's staunchest ally on the board. He offered his hand. "I owe you an apology." "We all do." I shook his hand. "No apologies needed. We're neighbors." "This is what that should mean." "I just can't believe how much has changed," he said, watching children play. "Property values are up 15% already, you know." I smiled. Turns out treating people with dignity is good business. As twilight settled over our liberated neighborhood, my wife slipped her hand into mine. "Was it worth it?" she asked. "All those years of planning, all those properties?" I watched as Mrs. Rodriguez taught neighborhood kids how to dance on the same street where she once feared parking her grandson's tricycle. "Every penny," I said. "Some things you can't put a price on." The legal aftermath took months to resolve. Karen and her former board members filed lawsuit after lawsuit, all dismissed or settled in our favor. The county prosecutor found enough evidence of financial misconduct to bring charges, though Karen eventually accepted a plea deal: community service and restitution, but no jail time. As for me, I began the process of selling back the homes I'd purchased. I offered each tenant the opportunity to buy at fair market value, with favorable financing terms. Many accepted. Those who preferred to rent could continue doing so with no increase. I wasn't in this for profit, I was in it for justice. The media got wind of our story, of course. Local news at first, then national. The HOA revolution, they called it. I declined most interview requests, but I did speak to one journalist who asked the right question. Why go to such lengths? Because some systems can't be fixed from within, I told her. Sometimes you need to change the power structure itself. She studied me for a moment. You know, people are calling you a hero. I shook my head. I'm just a contractor who got tired of watching good people suffer. Heroes run into burning buildings. I just filed some paperwork. 6 months later, I received a letter from a neighborhood across town. "We have a Karen too," it read. "Any advice?" I chuckled and wrote back, "Start buying houses." In the years since our revolution, over 24 communities have reached out for guidance. We've helped create a template for HOA reform, transparency requirements, term limits, clear appeals processes. Some states are even considering legislation based on our model. But the real victory isn't in bylaws or legal precedents. It's in the revival of community itself. Last weekend, I sat on my front porch, coffee in hand, watching neighborhood kids ride bikes across lawns without fear of violation notices. The Rodriguez family hosted a quinceañera with music that continued past the old noise curfew. The Chins expanded their garden again, adding a small pagoda that would have given Karen an aneurysm. And on my driveway, my work truck, my wife's SUV, my daughter's Honda, and not a single violation notice in sight. My phone buzzed with a text from the Jenkins family. "Wheelchair ramp painting party this weekend. Rainbow colors. Everyone invited." I smiled and typed back, "We'll bring the brushes." Because when a system is broken, sometimes the only fix is to own it.